Welcome to the Pompey Politics Podcast.
I'm Ian Tiny Morris.
And I'm Simon Sansbury. Hello. Yeah, that should. If you talk now, Ian, it should come through while I sort the rest
Is
of it
that
out.
on the mic?
Yes, please.
Cool. And there we go. So we're going out live. Yes?
Yes.
So good evening and welcome back. We are having the mother of all technical difficulties. So rather than hearing Simon's dulcet tones for the next few minutes, you are going to be saddled with me. So thank you for joining us. If you are staying up during the night, obviously the press coverage will be covering the national issues. So we'll just focus in on how things are looking locally. So if we start with Portsmouth South, as we predicted, as I think everyone predicted, it looks like a very solid win for Stephen Morgan. There's going to be the question about who comes second. At the moment, it looks like that's a kind of neck and neck race between the Conservatives and Reform. And this is going to be one of the themes that we keep touching on throughout the night in terms of the strength of the Reform vote. If we move to the north, we've had conflicting reports. I think the one thing we can be absolutely certain of is that it is going to be very close. Most are predicting a sort of 1% either way. I think most people are favouring Amanda Martin at the moment, having seen the boxes open, but we are a little way into the count. The turnout in Portsmouth North has been declared at 59.25%, so 5% down on the 2019 general election, which was just over 64. And again, what we're seeing is quite a strong Reform performance, which looks like it could have split the vote on the right and may have given Amanda Martin the win. For the first time this election, we have got roving reporters out in Gosport, Fareham and Waterlooville, and in the Havant constituency. And things there are a very mixed bag. If we go back to my old hometown of Gosport, the message coming out there is that Caroline Dinage is going to hold Gosport, but again, another two-way fight for second place, this time between Labour and Reform. Again, it's another one where we predicted that the Conservatives would probably do well and hold. The message coming out of Fareham is a little bit more sketchy. We thought initially it was looking very good for Suella Braverman, that she would hold her seat. Some of the messages coming our way now says it is looking a bit tighter potentially with Labour and Reform. The message we're getting is that their activists are looking particularly cheerful. We're not sure whether that's just doing better than expected or whether in fact there is a realistic chance of Suella being ousted. If we then travel along the M27 over to Havant, that is looking really fascinating. So at the moment we've got some boots on the ground there who are telling us that Havant is looking like a three-way fight that is too close to call. I think there was an expectation following the local elections where the Conservatives kind of really collapsed from a very strong position in Havant, that the general election could be a little bit tighter. I don't think what anybody predicted was that it would turn into a three-way fight. So the message that we're getting from the Havant count is that Labour, Reform and the Conservatives are in a three-way tussle, and it could go either way. Trying to juggle a number of things at the moment. The interesting election as a whole is if we sit back and look at what we expected to happen. I think this is probably the election where much for 6 weeks the polls remain fairly flat. He has an excellent chance of walking into number 10, and obviously whilst everybody is being cautious at the moment, and Angela Rayner on the BBC was very much not wishing to count any chickens, it is an absolute racing certainty that Keir Starmer will be in number 10. I was going to say tomorrow, but later today. And I think there was a belief that it was about 4 a.m. that probably he was likely to come forward, and Rishi would step up and kind of admit defeat. The real big story of the night, of course, is Reform and their vote share. We saw the first couple of results declared in Sunderland North and in Blythe, and whilst those are constituencies that they were always going to return a Labour MP, if I look at the Blythe result, over 10,000 votes for Reform, which again was interesting. If we looked at Sunderland, the Labour vote share was actually down on the 2019 election, and some of those votes appeared to have gone to Reform. For those of you who are watching along live at home, we simply don't have enough screens or enough bandwidth. Then I'm sure other results have come in, but I think the effect of Reform and what that means, if it's a situation, if we look across our region, it does suggest that that Reform potentially will have affected the outcome in Portsmouth North and possibly Fareham and Havant as well. And the question as to whether we're going back to the days where that utilised the significance of the vote. It's really going to be a question of what happens to the Conservatives after tonight's election. I think the exit polls put them on 131 seats, which those of you that follow the podcast and listen to our episode last Sunday will know that the statistical modelling we were looking at, had the Conservatives down as low as 80, at least sub 100 in all of those analyses. So I guess if they get to 130, it will be a better night than they've expected. And again, one of the peculiarities of our system, even though it looks like it's going to end up with a very, very decent vote share, I think the most optimistic prediction was that they would end up with 13 MPs, which, isn't a huge number in amongst 650. But it is the question then of what happens next for the Conservative Party once the dust has settled from this election, because I think the one thing we can be absolutely sure of so far is that they are going to take a pretty heavy defeat.
Well, you've really covered that. Thank you very much, Ian.
Wow, I am now going to take a breath. I am going to take a sip of Diet Coke, and I will kind of. So
you can rest for a second. I finished my hair.
Yeah.
Simon comes up. How, Jerry? Would you like to say anything on the stream, Jerry?
On air?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
So Jerry the Inquisitor Brown, as those of you who have been following the podcast will know, he's been our man out and about, helping us with some of the technical difficulties. So I guess, and has provided hot beverages, which we are very grateful of.
Very.
If you're looking down on the floor, Jerry, Portsmouth North still looking close, or is the gap starting? No, too close to call, and we will take that as we stand. So
yeah, just to kind of fill listeners and viewers in. So we're well into the counting stage in both constituencies. We're beyond the point of just making sure that the number of ballots in each box matches the number of voters that have been ticked off on the register in the polling station. So basically, the count in earnest is underway. What was it? 52.9? Sorry,
59.25
Portsmouth North.
For Portsmouth North. Mm-hmm. The 2019 number was 64.4. So
slightly down.
Slightly down. Well, down by 5%. And it's another one which is peculiar because when we were here for the council elections, it only seems a few weeks ago, we got these massive predictions that turnout was up, turnout was very high, and it was about the same. And again, early indications we had was that turnout looks strong today, but in the north it is down on where it was 5 years ago. No, 59.25. We'll let you go and check that, Jerry, if you have folk on the inside. But no, and again, there was a conversation. We are surrounded. You might pick up some background noise between one of the other reporters who were confirming that it was 5% down on where it was last year or last election.
Jerry's gesticulating whether you need another beverage.
No, I am absolutely fine. I am sorted.
Thank you,
Jerry. And I guess at some point fairly soon, now the technical issues have been resolved, we'd probably better try and summon in one of our roving reporters and get them to give us an update from, because obviously that'll be technically challenging for you, Simon. And
just for a laugh, let's see if we can completely break the technology.
I don't think you've had enough fun thus far. So I guess from those kind of updates so far, Simon, shocked as I am?
It's I don't know. There's a bit of a kind of an absurdity to it in the sense of it's this whole thing that you've spent these whole 6 weeks kind of waiting for. I thought it was quite telling. The whole thing started with a rainstorm, and it was starting to rain as we came to the Guildhall tonight. But yeah, quite surprised. I must admit, on initial responses at the start of the election, I must admit I thought some of the polling was off base with Portsmouth North, but it seems that actually as time has gone on, that's hardened, and it's become a much closer race. And indeed tonight, that might well be the case. I don't think anybody was I don't think anyone was thinking there was any likelihood of there being any shock for who was going to be returned, who's going to be returned in Portsmouth South. But the interesting thing, as we've said before, is going to be what's happening to the second and third places. Who will that be? Will Reform beat the Conservatives in Portsmouth South? But we will just have to wait and see. Have we got any? Have we got? Just excuse. It is a bit. There's a lot more people here than we have on the locals. So it's we've kind of squeezed ourselves into a bit of a corner. But here we are. So any news from our roving reporters, Ian?
Yeah. So I'm just going to invite a couple to dial in. So if we look at Gosport, we'll just recap Gosport at the moment. So we've got Paddy Bergin there. Reporting for us, who has been working for the Reform team. He's been on the podcast before. His message coming through to us is it looks like that is going to be a Conservative hold, Labour and Reform neck and neck for second place. Up in Fareham, we've got a newbie to the podcast, Edward, and apologies, Edward, I'm trying to play with my phone to get your surname. Who's actually one of the candidates standing in Fareham and Waterlooville, but has very generously offered to keep us updated. There, I think the picture is a little bit more mixed. They seem to be, I would say, probably about half an hour to an hour behind where we are here. So their verification of count came in later. Again, messages, Labour and Reform doing well, and the Tory support seems to have softened. But one we're really keen to get hold of is friends of the pod, the Stetler and Waldorf of Hayling Island, Mark Coates and Paul Gray, who are reporting a three-way tussle in Havant. And
I think Mark was saying that he's in a good spot to okay. Let's see whether he's actually able to come on now.
Are you able to dial him in from the thing, or do I need to go and poke and prod him?
Let me just see whether.
Well, this is all new technology. It's the first time we've tried with roving reporters, so we will we'll see whether we can get hold of one of them.
Nope. Okay, that's hang on. Let me.
That didn't appear to work quite well. I think the other thing is just to give an idea of we've done a bit of a roll call on Who's Hill. We bumped into Jacob, the independent running in Portsmouth and Southsea, who said that effectively most of the candidates are here, but the major players, if we can put that in air quotes, of Stephen Morgan, Amanda Martin, and Penny Mordaunt are not here yet. So I'm guessing as they are the folk who most of the media are going to want to spend their time talking to. They are hiding at home at the moment, just being kept updated, possibly listening to so if Penny, Amanda, or Stephen, if you're listening, then obviously we'd love to hear from you. We might be a tad optimistic for that.
We might be. Yeah, I'm sure they've got other things to be thinking about just now. I think we might have missed our window for Mr. Coates.
Has he gone home?
No, I think he might have just gone back into the because obviously from the calling floor, from the counter. So if he kind of steps out for a moment, then he's got an opportunity to speak to us or to message us. So we'll keep an eye and see whether when we can get one of our colleagues from the other local contests to come on, just so you don't have to listen to our voices. And let's.
So if we just pause the feed for a moment, we'll get on the telephone and see who we can summon up. And as soon as we got an update for you, we'll be back online.
Okay, give me a second. Sorry, you saw the exit part, yeah.
Edward do. I'll just step quickly out and just I'll try calling a few people and see.
Oh, okay. Oh, I think he's trying to line someone up. Okay. What, to the number?
The 02392 2024.
Okay.
Thanks. Jerry. Did I hear the turnout figure for Portsmouth South?
You did. We're still not. The mics are still not live, by the way.
That's all right. No,
Yeah. Sorry. Portsmouth South 53.05.
right.
You're right.
Me?
Mm.
Yes, yeah. I'm just poised, waiting for. I just had a message.
Okay. I'm gonna. What I've realised is I need to come out like the second session so that the iPad's free for the call. All right. If I'm tinkling them again.
Oh, I hate iPhones.
You want me to call him?
No, it's all right. I've sent him a. I messaged him that I sent him the number, but of course he hasn't got an iPhone, so I got a sent failure.
Spy Mr. Zimmer. I'm just going to vamp for a bit. Right.
Sorry, mate.
No, that's all right.
I'm trying to listen to 2 audio streams at once.
Okay, so while Ian just tries to line up, the best laid plans of mice and men. So we're just trying to sort out the connection to hear from one of our contributors in the Gosport count. Things are still looking focused and lively here in Portsmouth. You can see lots of the candidates, lots of fervent activity. Haven't yet seen either Penny Mordaunt or Stephen Morgan. There's a gaggle of what look like some activists from the Lib Dems and the Conservatives over by the stage. So there's obviously a lull in kind of a particular activity, or they finish kind of counting on that table. So we're just kind of seeing how things are progressing, really. And hopefully we can get some news from elsewhere around the region. So be interesting to see, of course, will there be shocks? Will there be surprises, or not? Who knows? Only time will tell.
Well, the message has been sent. Let's
Okay.
let's hope that Paddy Pitt and gives us.
Okay. So we're seeing. So Lee was asking whether the turnout is up or down in Portsmouth South. I believe that is down, but let me just check. Yeah, so the turnout was 63.9% in 2019. So an interesting drop, considering there was. I know some of the media were talking about actually increased turnout elsewhere, but the two constituencies we've looked at close to home so far, the turnout's down.
Yeah, and the turnout markedly down in Portsmouth South, but I think there is a school of thought that says, with it being an early July election, an awful lot of the students will have gone home. I mean, obviously there's the option to postal vote, but I think the last one was in November, wasn't it? A good time before the universities were, it was December, but the early part just before they broke up for the Christmas break. So that could explain why the turnout was down. So we've fired off messages to our roving reporters who are on the floor. Obviously, as I explained, the people that we've got there, some of them are on the counting floor where they've got to have their phones turned off. So it is a little bit intermittent at the moment in terms of us being able to get some first-hand responses through there. We will keep poking and prodding them, and if there are any other developments from this end, we will be back to give you an update.
Okay. Do you want to? Yeah. So we're hoping to have someone being able to join us shortly, if our technology can work. It would be nice.
Well, we've got message that they are calling now, Simon. Oh, that sounds promising.
Oh. Hang on. I've got it calling in loads of places, but it...
Hello there, Simon.
Hello, can you hear us?
We can hear you well.
Oh, this is marvellous. You're coming through loud and clear. Now, obviously, Mr. Coates, are you still adopting that party line of not counting your chickens until they're hatched, or a national general level of cartwheeling currently?
Oh, goodness me. Across, well, I've got Councillor Paul Gray with me as well, who's taking an impartial view of proceedings. So we'll ask him what he thinks in a second. But I am going to take that view. We don't know. There are chickens to be hatched, but we're not counting them because they haven't.
Oh,
And do you know I've got the word haven't in there at the end?
yeah, no, it's very good. But frankly, I think your chickens have not only hatched, but they've been jointed, floured, egged, and deep fried. You are home.
Spatchcocked.
You are home and hosed, young Mark. And welcome, Paul. So, from a Lib Dem perspective, how's the night looking for you so far?
Evening, Ian. Yeah, looking obviously nationwide, it's looking very, very positive. I suppose, if I'm absolutely honest, there's a tiny twist. There's always the dream that we might actually win more seats than the Tories, and that's looking unlikely, and it always was a bit of a long shot. But overall, it's obviously looking like a superb night. In terms of the position with Labour, I mean, you're absolutely right. Let's call Coates out at this point now. They've clearly got a massive majority. Here at Havant, however, it is looking too close to call. Genuinely, I've been around the table with all the parties, and it is looking like a genuine three-way split at the moment. I would put Conservative and Labour marginally ahead of Reform at the moment, but there are a lot of boxes to come out from a lot of different parts of the constituency. So I'm too close to call here at the moment to say where Havant's going to go. We really don't know. So,
in terms of your process, have you done verification? Are you into the full count yet, or are you still are we still?
No, we're counting now.
We're into the full count. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, through verification, as I say, it was too close looking through the ballots to get a real call on it. It still has at the moment. I wouldn't be too surprised if it was the one that went to a recount.
No, same here. We were talking about that, and I mean, you try and put sort of numbers from box counts into a number crunching, don't you? Stick them in a laptop, turn the handle, and see. We had a Labour winning by 90 when we did that, which was optimistic probably.
Right.
It is crazy close here in Havant. We had 58% turnout, then 58.5% turnout, which is yeah. And that was disappointing. So I think about roughly 10% less than last time. So not a big turnout.
And that's interesting because that mirrors what we saw in Portsmouth South. So that number from our perspective looks 10% down on 2019. Portsmouth North 5% down on where it was, and that is another one that is looking too close to call at the moment. So. You know, I won't ask Paul Gray to produce a bar chart, knowing his political heritage at this point. But I get, you know, if you know, are you going to sit completely on the fence on Havant, Mark? If you know, before you went into the tonight, how confident are you feeling?
I was more confident actually beforehand, if I'm completely honest. Yeah, I thought we're gonna sneak in with, you know, couple of thousand. I thought it would start to become not obvious but fairly clear now that we were looking good, and I mean, there is that, there's the national picture. Obviously, Labour are looking very strong, but it is genuinely very, very close. We've got three parties that look like they're going to lose their deposit. I think Lib Dem, Green, and Social Work. I
think Lib Dems we might hold on, but I'm not. Again, I'm not. It's in that dimension there where you're talking about small proportions, but actually the difference between 5% and 10%, it's not actually that huge. So we could lose, to be honest. But I'm actually for the kind of greater good, I'm not really that worried about that. But frankly, we weren't really in the fight here. And it's no secret to say that I'm not a fan of Alan Mack, the existing MP. So I'll be quite pleased if Labour do win ultimately this evening.
So interested in the perspective from you both on the reform vote in Havant. Obviously, they had a little bit of success at the locals. The Rainbow Coalition didn't have space for them. Have you been surprised at the level of reform vote? And it almost, I hate to suggest it seems like they might not just be taking votes from the Conservatives in Havant tonight.
So we've got, I think we're slightly, you're going to see here the fact that Paul's been in the game a bit longer than me, because I naively have been very confident saying, about 17% they'll get something like that, and then it will be between Labour and Tories. And I suppose I was feeding that to voters and believing my own lines. Paul is less surprised, but I'm not going to lie. I'm verging on shocked in terms of how well they've done across the country, and certainly how well they've done here in Havant. I think I've been a bit naive there. What were your thoughts, mate?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. And when Reform are projected to get something like 17 seats, I think it is tonight. It's not a surprise. Sorry to say, told you so, but it just all lines up for it. Havant is, if you look at the demographics and voting patterns, Havant is. It's not a surprise that Havant is where Reform have got their 18 counts around the country, and it's a surprise. I actually got a comedian about a week or so with I think it's 20 target for Reform, and I was saying I was surprised that actually hadn't made it into it, because it is prime territory for them. If you look at the demographics of a place like Clacton and a lot of seaside places, there's an awful lot of similarities in this part of the world. I think they might have done quite well in Fareham and Waterlooville as well. Again, you're looking at very, very similar demographic and voting patterns.
Yeah, we've got our man on the floor in Fareham and Waterloo.
It's Stephen Morgan just into the council, and as well as Amanda Martin.
So I thought that was a round of applause. Paul had hastily produced the bar chart to hold up with the progress.
Give me 30 seconds, pen and paper. You can have,
Yeah, it doesn't take long to knock up a bar chart that doesn't actually.
It doesn't. I mean, given that we don't need to worry, Simon, about accuracy or anything.
You're just creating two rectangles and colouring them different in PowerPoint, really, aren't you?
Absolutely. So in terms of the fight, presuming we, obviously if we go to a recount and all bets are off, do you guys have a feel at the moment as to when Havant might declare?
Well, crumbs, now you're asking.
I don't, and I'll tell you part of the reason I don't, and hopefully it's not a criticism, and just in case any staff here doesn't think it is. There's a relatively new team actually in Havant Borough Council who are also running tonight, and they're being very, very precise.
And very careful.
Very, very careful. So I wouldn't like to put a time on it, but it's probably going to be
another hour.
It's going to be I was going to say a couple of hours, I guess, I would think.
Yeah, I think we're well after 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, here I think we're thinking about 3 and a half, 3. Very interesting from our end that Stephen and Amanda have both arrived, because I don't know whether all of the faces are there at the count in Havant, but shall we put the potential winners have all been missing up until Stephen and Amanda walking in just a couple of minutes on air. So,
well, I've got a story. We've got a story there, Simon, because apparently Alan Mack's been here for about 3 hours, but he booked out the mezzanine floor above the sports hall so that he could look over it, and he's sitting up there with a couple of security guards maybe some pizza, a chaise longue, grapes. I don't know, but no one's seen him. He's in his ivory tower and he's not coming out. But we have had John Perry from Fareham and Steph Harvey from Labour actually wandering around pitch side.
Liberal Democrats and Nettie from all of the candidates,
every single one. Yeah.
The Conservatives, obviously, who are frequently criticised for being out of touch and elitist, thought they'd sign off with booking a private room so they weren't with everyone else in the same building.
Yeah. Matching the attitude at the hustings. Mary hasn't turned up to 1 of 9.
Can I have your attention, please?
Some news here.
Candidates and agents to come to the front here and to the lectern to observe the doubtful ballot papers for Portsmouth South, please. That's candidates and agents only for Portsmouth South.
So candidates and agents for Portsmouth South being called to the stage to view the questionable ballots.
And this is always
moving along apace, I guess.
Indeed, and this is always the time of night where, if anybody has been especially creative in their illustration of the cock and balls on their ballot paper, it's a light moment. I'm sure when you two stood, there was nobody that ribald in Hayling Island.
Well, again, I think that's a moment where I was shocked and Paul wasn't, but some of the language of the people on Hayling, my goodness me, and the fact they can fit all of those words into a little box where I can only normally struggle to get an X.
And you talk about them, and their grammar's improved considerably in some cases.
Wow, you know.
Well, there we go. At the end of the day, I guess that's the mechanism that voters have to express their displeasure if there isn't, because there's not a none of the above option, is there? So it's that kind of weird thing of, do you turn out and make a vote, or do you turn out but spoil your ballot, because that's the way you kind of communicate your dissatisfaction either with the process or with the selection of candidates. It's I mean, that's democracy, isn't it? I guess if
I'm a big fan.
If your contribution to the debate is to stand up in the room and shout unmentionables, then I guess that's the thing. But
that's democracy, yeah. It's just, I think it's good that people have the opportunity to do it. I'd much rather see a spoiled ballot paper than see someone not turn out to vote.
To be honest, Simon, as interesting as that is, I'm more interested in hearing about any of the spoiled ballot papers there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they don't let us close enough to observe. We're sat at the back.
And we're under strict instructions of despite as viewers will have gathered, our really, really high-tech setup here, we are not allowed to show individual ballots. I was going to ask, I don't know if you're covering Chichester at all. It might be just a little too far away, but I have read that the Tories have conceded Chichester. And that's really?
Yeah, it's come to, we've got a little WhatsApp feed. We've got some very enthusiastic members, and but it said that the Tories have conceded Chichester. You might want to double check that one. That might not be bona fide.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's out of our parish. I mean, that's across the border into Sussex. You know, we really are.
Yeah.
We'd be pushing boundaries there, but and was that is that Labour counting at least one chicken in Chichester, or is
I don't know.
That would be a Liberal Democrat.
Would it?
It
would indeed.
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
I mean, yeah, I'm quite interested in Chichester, and because obviously it does border with us, and also with Bognor, where I've got a friend, Claire Walsh, standing. I'm very keen to see her do well. She's a wonderful candidate, actually, but. Yeah, as far as Havant goes, no one's going to concede anything.
No, and it feels like we're going to go deep into the night with both Havant and Portsmouth North. We're going to try and get another update on Fareham and Waterlooville, which initially looked like it was going to be a comfortable Conservative hold, and is now. We haven't had a message for a while, but the message is that Labour and Reform are looking happy. Gosport looks a bit more clear cut that our friend or the Conservative Caroline Dinage there is held, that we will try and dial up our man in Gosport to see whether he can give us any insight there. So I think we'll let you guys go. Obviously, Mark needs to get fully warmed up before he starts turning the cartwheels. We wouldn't want him to to strain anything. And obviously, you know, Paul, we're going to trust you as a friend of the pod to keep an eye on him and make sure that he doesn't do anything he might regret tomorrow.
To be absolutely fair to you, Ian, I long clearly done management a while ago. So
Thanks very much, guys.
thank you so much, guys.
Keep us posted.
Yeah, we absolutely will, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so that was the first of our live reports. Well, I hope to have some more as the evening progresses. I think we'd take a quick refreshment break.
Yep, we're going to recenter our Zen.
Yeah.
And then we will try and quarters to give you an update from either Fareham or Gosport.
So we'll see you back in a bit. Grab a cup of tea. Well, our listeners have obviously got free access to tea and stuff, so our arrangement is slightly more complicated, but we'll see in a bit. So we've just had the calling of the candidates and agents for Portsmouth North to the front for reviewing the doubtful papers. So again, that's the exercise that we'd had about 10-15 minutes ago in Portsmouth for Portsmouth South, the questionable ballots that may or may not have been enthusiastically decorated by voters, or might be too difficult to tell which is the intended mark. But we'll see. Ian's fervently trying to get hold of one of our other roving reporters, or are you having a look to see what news there was from elsewhere? Weren't you?
I was having a look to see.
Yeah.
You know, it's obviously very early in the evening, and it is mad that there seems to be the Sunderland South versus Blythe race to declare first, which, you know, both of which had happened by 11:30, and it seems that nobody kind of, once the gold and silver has been allocated for that particular race, it doesn't look like anybody else too much is looking to compete for the bronze. So yeah, at the moment, I'm just trying to follow along and see whether there's anything significant. And really, it's all of the focus at the moment still on the exit poll, and you know, the prediction there. They're not tweaking it based on any results that are coming through. It's as it was with Labour, with their sort of, it was very similar to 1997 and the landslide for Tony Blair. So over 400 seats and a very, very comfortable majority.
Yeah, I can see elsewhere. We've obviously got our kind of head buried on what's going on here, and what's happening kind of elsewhere around the region. But I can see that elsewhere there are reports of 3 declarations for the Conservatives, 39 for Labour, 2 for Lib Dem, and 1 for Reform.
So Reform have won their first seat.
Indeed, that it was Ashfield.
Ashfield. Trying to think where Ashfield might be. It's
Kind of Midlands away. But I know that Eastleigh's been declared for the Lib Dems.
One you expected? Or hoped?
Yeah, I don't think that's a surprise in any way, shape, or form.
So at the moment, we are struggling to get hold of our roaming correspondent. So we will pause for a minute while we try and continue to get hold of people, and as soon as we've got any update, we can come back to you.
See, just before we go, I can see that we've got Donna Jones is in the hall. Saw her arrive earlier on. You can see some more established figures from the Labour camp. Some of the local councillors. You can see Charlotte Gerarda, Mary Valley. So quite a panoply of familiar faces as the kind of as the night progresses.
Yeah, a couple of independents have been here as well. We bumped into to George Medrick and Raymond Dent, obviously, are supporting Jacob Short in Portsmouth South. We had a little chat with Jacob. Obviously, Jacob been very active in the local scene for the last 2-3 years, and I think it would be fair to say that you know, although Jacob said he had enjoyed the campaign, had found this even much more punishing even than the local election. I think trying to cover the whole of Portsmouth South with a relatively small band of activists, I think has been very challenging.
Firefly Sunnyquill on YouTube. Thanks very much for the for the updates. They said that Ashfield was Lee Anderson's patch.
Yes.
And although they go on to say that although the exit poll said Reform would win both Barnsley seats, but Labour has won them both comfortably. So some interesting contradictions to the exit polls, which is always interesting to see. They're not precise, they're not 100% accurate, but they're normally not far out in total numbers. But I guess seat by seat there might be you're bound to get a variance, aren't you?
Well, I think there is always going to be a variance, and I think a lot of it, the exit polls looks at the change from the last election, and obviously Reform pretty much weren't in the last election, or were nothing like they were. So I think they did put quite a strong caveat that once you got beyond sort of Labour, Conservative, and the Lib Dems, the smaller parties they're under, they were much less confident that they could be accurate with those numbers.
We've got a smiling George Madrick heading our way. Hello, George.
George, good evening.
Let me chuck a microphone in your direction. If you're all right, sitting off camera. It's very busy here tonight.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are we?
Yes, George, we are.
Is that under something? Oh, is that trapped on something? Is that the football? Yes.
It's out on the wire. There you go.
It could be. So
Let's try that.
Are we all good, gentlemen?
Well, good's probably a strong term, George. What are you seeing down there on the counting floor?
Well, I'm pretty much happy to confirm. That was irony, by the way. Not happy in the slightest, but Amanda has taken the north of the city. Before Drayton and Farlington has been counted, Amanda's about 1,800 ahead. However, although Penny looks like she's won Drayton, she's not won it by that many. So 1,800. We think she'll catch about 500-600, which means Amanda will win around about 1,000. And that's confirmed numbers. That's not speculation.
No, and I guess what are the numbers looking like for Reform? Significant impact in the
yeah. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you the precise figures because to be honest with you, I've been focusing more on Labour and Tories. But Reform have definitely got a very, very good percentage. I wouldn't be surprised if they picked up high 20s, mid 20s. And I just think it's so ironic that Reform voters over the last year have been saying to me, we want to vote Reform, but we don't want Labour. And it's just the most ridiculous concept in the world. And they've ended up basically, Reform voters indirectly have basically just elected a Labour MP, which is crazy.
And I guess it does play to some of that sort of social media narrative where in a lot of the things that we've seen for perhaps people who haven't been that politically engaged, it almost feels like they think they're electing a president.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how it, I mean, right, for example, Ian, I've had many conversations with, today, let's give you a perfect example today. Today I was in Paulsgrove and someone literally come out and said, if Nigel doesn't win, it's an absolute con. He said, because I went in there to vote for Nigel and he wasn't even on the ballot paper. And I was like, we were not in Clacton. And the gentleman just didn't understand it. He just didn't grasp the concept. And I think a lot of times in our local politics and national politics in the UK, people genuinely believe that they're voting for the leader of a party when they're not. They're voting for an MP who then in turn votes for the leader of the party. And people often forget as well that just because you voted for a Labour MP or a Tory MP doesn't mean they're actually going to be Labour or Tory for the entire term. They could swap to a different party. So, people don't realise this. So, if you vote, for example, I mean, let's look at the last couple of months. People have voted for, say, Tory MPs in 2019, and they've gone and defected to Reform or defected to Labour. And I can almost guarantee when someone voted for a Tory MP in 2019, they didn't want their vote to end up getting a Labour MP in power.
So if we look at Portsmouth South, obviously, first time Portsmouth independents have stood a candidate in a general election. And, we know there was a lot of speculation before the G as to whether you would stand in Portsmouth North. But Jacob Short has been standing for the Portsmouth independents in Portsmouth South. How do you think that's gone?
Well, our target and aim was always to get around about 1,000 votes. If you remember, when I stood as an independent in 2019, I mustered up around 700. And obviously then look what happened after that. So our aim was always to get about 1,000 votes, which we're hopeful for. Whether we get that or not, I don't know, but we're hopeful for 1,000. That was always our target. Anything around or above 1,000 would be classed as successful in our eyes. It was never meant to be something that we're going to try and win. It was just to basically create exposure and give Jacob a real good experience of running for a general election. I learned so much when I ran in 2019, and then I went and won in 2021. I think the interesting thing that I've got to reflect on, though, is basically everybody from every party is under the same agreement that everyone believes that if I had stood, I might have won.
And I wasn't going to put you on the spot, George, but seeing as you brought it up, there is an element of, obviously, Portsmouth Independents had a very strong showing over the last, since that 2019 election in the north of the city. You have a strong personal brand, and I think there was always that dilemma in terms of, if you stood, would you split the Conservative vote? But it looks like Reform has done that.
Yeah.
Any regrets?
No. I say when I've stood for election, I've stood for the right reasons. I stood for the locals in Portsmouth because I felt I could do a better job than the ones that are currently there. But at this moment in time in my life, I'm personally not ready to be an MP, and I've always said that the people of Portsmouth have got to come first. And if I did win, I genuinely feel that I wouldn't have been as good as I would have wanted to be, because in my life I'm just not ready. I've got things I want to do, things I want to achieve. I've got things that I enjoy, and if I was able to become an MP, I'd want to be just an MP, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm only 34. I've got a long time yet. The only thing that kind of is in the hesitant mind is we knew that basically unless any of the candidates tonight got over 40%, the likelihood is I would have won. I mean, we were kind of looking that I would probably get around 32, 33%. And if any of the candidates tonight get less than 40, I think it's fair to say we would have probably won. Which is, but as I say, even so, there is no regrets, because I'm sitting here now and I'm happy to say that I wasn't ready for it, because, and I think that people of Portsmouth need an MP that's going to be fully dedicated. And, it's difficult, Ian, because I've got no relationship with the man. And that's not because of me, just so you add. I mean, I've tried to reach out to her multiple times, tried to speak to her multiple times, and she has absolutely no interest. And Charlotte Gerrard, the leader of Labour Party, literally approached me a couple of weeks ago and said, look, I've got to try and get you two to speak, because if she does win, you've got to work together. I lead the largest party in the north of the city, and Amanda's about to become the MP of north of the city. So it makes sense that, she hasn't got to like me, but she has got to try and work for me for the benefit of the residents. And I've been told literally 10 minutes ago there is categorically no chance in that happening. So what does that tell you about the person you've just elected? I mean, if the person that you've elected is refusing to work with the leader of the largest party in the north of the city, then what does that tell you about her actual personal ambitions and desires? She clearly doesn't put the residents first. Otherwise, she'd put aside her personal differences with me and the party, and she'll work for the benefit of the residents together. I'm happy to. I'm willing to. I don't like her. She doesn't like me. That's fine. Yeah. But I would always work with her because it's the right thing to do. And I think people often forget that. And as I say, it's been made abundantly clear to me in the last 10 minutes, very clear to me, that isn't something that's going to happen.
And again, that's a great shame for the people of Portsmouth. And I guess on reflection, George, I know that with independents, there's never been a whip. All of your councillors, kind of follow what they think is best for their residents. In a way, are you slightly surprised that, having backed Penny, that it doesn't look like that same groundswell of independent voters have kind of followed Penny across to get her across the line? Is that a slight surprise for you, or is that something you were never sure which way the independents would run despite your position?
Look, I've always said, right, so let's just put it very clearly. Pip did not endorse Penny. That's the first thing I think we've got to make abundantly clear. I did.
Yeah.
And that was a conscious decision. And I spoke to my team before I did, and they were fine with it, because we are truly independent. And I know that there's councillors in the north of the city that are PIP members that voted Labour. I know there's PIP members that have voted Liberals, and I know there's PIP members that voted Reform. The only ones that I'm aware that any PIP councillors didn't vote for is Green Party. But other than that, there was a spread. So, yeah. I mean, that's why a lot of them didn't publicly endorse Penny, but I did. So that's the first thing that's clear. Secondly, I also said since day one, me and Russell, actually, Councillor Simpson, have always said since day one that we believe we take more votes off of Labour than Tories. I know you disagree with that as well, Ian. I know you've always disagreed with that.
I do.
But I think that they've played a game where, for example, in Paulsgrove, Labour have obviously done pretty well. They've beat Tories in Paulsgrove, and I wonder, if I stood, would they have done that? Probably not. I think in Nelson, they've beat Tories by about 650 votes in Nelson. Would they have done that if I stood? Probably not. So I don't. I mean, look, hindsight's a brilliant thing, right? But I do think that there is a slight chance that our voters probably went Reform, probably went Labour, and probably went Tory. They're a very mixed bag.
Yeah.
The only people we don't seem to lose votes to or gain votes to is the Liberals, to be fair. But other than that, we seem to gain and lose votes from every other party.
It's an interesting thing, but I guess that's where you get the difference between people quite often vote for something. You know, there's a lot of people that vote for someone different for locals as they do for a general, and their motivations for doing that might be quite different. So it's just quite interesting seeing how that's kind of played out on in Portsmouth North, considering that's obviously a concentration of the PIP support, and then how that's played out actually in a national election rather than a local election. But it has been interesting that you've been able to make that point that about how your party works and about how your grouping works and how that's different to the whipped part, the established kind of national parties with their whipping mechanisms and I think sometimes that doesn't I think people seem to forget that, and they seem to
honestly,
not realise that.
Honestly, Ian, right? So in this campaign, obviously we've got Jacob in the south, but I've helped Reform in the south because I like Mark Zimmer. In Havant, I was endorsing the Labour candidate to win in Havant. So it's not like I'm going for a particular. Look,
no,
you know,
it's a person by person thing.
And that's where I think I differ from a lot of people that are in politics, especially local politics. Is people, especially in a little bubble of politics, are very lineal. They're very one directional. And people think, oh, if you vote Penny, you must be a Tory. Come on, Ian. Do you think I'm a Tory?
Well, I think you're a man of many colours, George, and you've worn most of them over time. And
are you saying he's a chameleon?
I might put that out there. I'm not sure green's quite your colour, but
no, I think we can agree there. And I think what I look at with all things is what is the best of Pompey. And I think fundamentally, without any shadow of a doubt, no questions asked, Penny was the best person out of the 5 candidates. And losing her tonight is an absolute travesty. And I think that Portsmouth is going to suffer dramatically for it. And I'm telling you now, and I said this to people, that I know very well that voted Reform but didn't want Labour in. I've said to them, don't moan at me about Labour being your MP. Don't moan at me about it, because those people that voted Reform instead of Labour, Reform instead of Tories, have literally just cost the seat. And it's disappointing. Now, I understand. Don't get me wrong. I understand democracy's healthy, and I understand they wanted to vote Reform because of the national platform. I get it. A lot of disenfranchised voters. But people are voting Reform for a reason, right? And I think Tories need to understand, appreciate, and respect that. But when we've got a first past the post system, there needs to be a lot more education on how that works, because people simply don't understand it.
Yeah, that's true. And like you said, education on the difference between, we don't have presidential elections. You're electing an MP who, and that party will make the decision and form a government. So there's lots of things. I think you're right. There's an education piece needed for how elections work. Russell, you're sitting there uncharacteristically quiet.
I was going to say, I've literally just been waved over to go, so I'm going to head off. Russell, you can say we'll swap seats.
Okay, I'm just conscious that the guy that was sat there, he probably can't get to his bag. But there's sweets. Yeah, I am.
So
you're selling me on the sweets.
As people are starting to flag, the sugar loading is going up, and some really interesting points there. So again, they say it's not over till the fat lady sings, or possibly we're not allowed to say that these days. He jokes, but it suggests that the lady might still be at least warming up for the final solo.
Some sweets for me.
Ooh, marvellous. Somebody's handed me. Ooh,
so, any your thoughts and observations from tonight, Russell?
It's really. I mean, this is my first general election count, so I was really curious to see how different it would be, and obviously it's very different. If anything, I would say it's probably a bit quieter than the local election count. Interesting enough, I don't know how much George covered on it, but we are. People forget that we are 9 independents. We're all individual. We all different spectrums, and George decided to endorse a candidate, He very much said I, and it was very much an individual thing. A lot of people were saying, well, you're all endorsing, and we're like, well, actually, George is endorsed, and it's his choice. And the reason he endorsed is because most people were expecting him to run. So he was like saying, well, don't vote for me, vote for Penny, because that's what we want to do. I think all of us kind of took just a stance of just probably actually enjoying the fact that we weren't running, especially in the north.
You needed a bit of a break after
Absolutely.
after those locals, yeah.
I spoke to Ian Fitchett, who runs the elections in Portsmouth, and I said, "Look, how can I help without picking a side?" He said, "We can put some posters up for voter ID, deadlines for this, deadlines for that," and I put them all on my window. And if anyone ever spoke to me, I'd always encourage them to really vote for the person they feel is right for them.
Yeah.
I come from I think I've said this before. I come from a family that are notorious swing voters, but they always taught me to vote for the person first, the policy second, and the party third. And that was what I was brought up on, and that's how I've always voted on. So I have a funny feeling, though, George is right. I think people have voted more for the leader of the parties than they had actually the candidate. And that's, to be honest, that's not new news, is it? They've been doing it for decades.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's the thing with elections. I mean, even on a local level, you don't know what was in the mind of the voter when they cast their ballot, or what motivated them to vote for that person, or for that party, whether it's the person or party, or what it was. At the end of the day, all you know is that that's what they voted for. And I think lots of commentators can get tied up in knots on what they think voters were motivated by, and why they voted for one person or for one party over another. But it's certainly been an interesting election with for want of a better word, the insurgency of reform, of what difference that's kind of made. They've gone from being they're just there, and they're another name on the ballot, but it's not really going to make any difference. In the space of 6 months, they've gone to actually changing the shape of some of the results tonight. Obviously, they've the last we heard, they've won. They've got their first seat. They've got Ashfield. So, and that's. I mean, that's you may like or not like what they're for, but that you've got to say that's certainly something to be able to do that.
I mean, they're not on the local level yet, so I haven't really got an opinion on them at all.
But that's another interesting point, because lots of parties, the kind of established national parties, they tend to follow a standard formula of get a council, get a base on the council, and then you kind of start going for MP when you've got enough kind of a voter base in the area. But they've not done that, and
I couldn't imagine what reform could do or value they could bring on a local level, because it sounds more national issues. Is there very similar to the okay, don't get me wrong, we know UKIP got in because they wanted to have a referendum, but I still feel that once Labour's in, they're going to have to give them a little bit of a chance to try and sort out this immigration, which is the main thing that drives, let's be honest, that drives reform at this moment in time. But yeah, it'd be very interesting to see what happens in 26. We see ourselves as we've stuck local, and people associate us with local, and they know that we're not looking at those national issues. So unless people want to bring national issues into local everyday things, then that's going to be up to the electorate. But
indeed, no, it's a very good point. Well, we'll see how kind of the rest of the night turns out. Russell, thank you so much for stopping by and spending some time with us. We greatly appreciate it. And enjoy the.
I'll try.
And enjoy the break now, Russell, until 2026. You get a year off.
Yeah, he's off.
No worries.
So that was some interesting contributions there. Hang on, sorry, that's the wrong. I turned down the wrong one.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, it is a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, George has been, there has been no love lost between George and Amanda, since Amanda announced her candidacy for Cosham. Obviously, Amanda stood as local councillor in Cosham, wasn't successful. The independents won that handsomely. And obviously George coming out and endorsing Penny was never really going to endear him to Amanda. And it
No.
looked like there was those of us that watch online forums, there was already tension between the two of them even before the election was called.
For whatever reason and however it started, it certainly appears that there's that I guess you don't get on with everybody, but I guess there's a valid point there of even the people that you don't get on with, you still do need to work with and do the right thing by the residents. So hopefully those things will develop, and those things will kind of move on, and we'll see. But we're kind of seeing, just trying to pass comment on what we're seeing around. There's a couple of tables where there still appears to be some activity of some with some ballots going on, but not really kind of much activity otherwise. So I don't know whether we are moving towards a point where there is some kind of progress here.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at the messages coming through from Havant, and it is still very, very close there, and they think they might even be into recount territory.
Okay, yeah, Mark's saying, do we want another call?
Let's patch them in and get an update. I'll while we're doing that, I will try and message the and see whether there's any news from Gosport or Fareham, and we'll roll from there.
Yeah, let's try that. Let's see where we get. I'm just going to mute for a second. So I'm just going to I'll turn on our other camera and see if we can we don't want that. I'm just going to put that on for a bit.
Marvellous. So we're 5-3. I think the expectation was sometime between sort of 3:30, but maybe with the slightly lower turnout, we might be getting close to result announcement.
We might indeed. There's there's lots of people. I always think that there's a bit of progress or something's happening when there's a load of people stood against one wall with their arms folded. It always seems to be an indication of something. I'm never quite sure entirely what, but it seems to signify something.
So just while we're waiting for Mark to a bucket of sweet sugar, my sugar levels I might need to.
For reasons.
Purely personal reasons.
Hang on, let me just.
Yeah. Those of you who've never done the all-night count before will not realise that at certain points during the process, you do get to that point where only gelatinized sugar will do, and we are getting to that point.
There's a point where you just need kind of something a bit, just to kind of give you that sugar rush, I guess. But just to counter that, I've brought an apple, so I'm going to try and eat an apple quickly.
So we are back online, and you join us as we have just heard that the first of the 5 seats that we've been covering here live has declared. The results are out in Gosport. So as our alleged returning officer, Simon, do you want to give us the rundown?
Well, so the Gosport results are Conservative hold, Carolyn Dinage 40.3% of the vote with 17,830 votes. Labour Edward Batterbury 11,776 votes. Matt Mullis 7,983. Tim Bearder for the Lib Dems 4,039. Tony Sudworth for the Greens 1,948. Jeff Roberts, Independent, 334. Lisa Englefield, Heritage Party, 319. And Hampshire Independents, Dave Watson, 48.
Just want to check your microphone, Simon, because I'm not sure.
Sorry, yeah, I was sat a little bit away from it because I was reading the screen.
No problem at all. So,
did you hear that? Did you hear them all right?
Yeah, I heard them loud and clear. So, quite a comfortable hold in the end for Caroline Dinage. I guess a greatly reduced majority, as I think last time it was. She was kind of a long way clear of everybody else. But in the end, what was that? About a 7,000 majority?
Over 6,000. And Reform coming third with just under 8,000 votes.
And again, I mean, 8,000 votes, very credible return. And it looks like the majority of those have come from the Conservatives. But in Gosport, at least one corner remains blue. It's I guess they had to win somewhere.
Well, indeed, we'll see kind of how the rest of the night shapes up. But that's the first result in our patch.
So as it stands at the moment, it's gone a little bit quiet here. I think Simon observed that people were stood with arms folded, but it doesn't seem to have precipitated too much action. I guess on your table watch, Simon, as you're looking out across the hall, have we still got piles of paper on tables, or is it starting to skinny down?
I'm taking a glance around. I'm not seeing anyone with any ballots.
So that would suggest we are close to a result.
There is a table in the far corner where there seems to be some activity. Yeah, they seem to be doing. They seem to still have some ballots there, but everyone else seems to be ballot free.
So that would suggest results might be imminent. And again, we've got no message from Fareham at the moment. We know that Havant is in a recount situation, so that could take some time. I guess it just depends whether that's a bundles recount or a full recount. So we are waiting for our roving reporters to sign in, but maybe if it's right in the cut and thrust, they'll be down on the floor. So that's why we can't get hold of them. So we will keep you informed of any developments here. As we said last time we chipped in, at the moment, the George Madrick, who's been down wandering around on the floor, his belief is that as they were going to count the final boxes, Penny was too far behind to pull it, and that Reef us in favour of Amanda Martin. But we obviously will wait for the final result here, and as soon as we've got it, or as soon as anybody steps up on stage, or we get one of our roving reporters calling in, we'll be back live and online.
hopefully we're going to have a further update from our friends in Havant. They've got some news for us. So far, the only result that we've got in the area is the Conservative hold for Conservative hold for Gosport and the Eastleigh Lib Dem gain from the Conservatives. So we're just kind of waiting to see some more come in. Hopefully, we're going to get some news from our roving reporters. Is it Mark or Paul there?
It's allegedly Paul that's going to be giving us a call. So we've tried teeing him up. I think it was Mark that made the call last time. So we can never guarantee those things. Here, it feels like the sort of lull before the storm. There are kind of whispers going around the hall that the result is done and dusted, and Amanda Martin has got home by about 1,000 votes. Now, obviously we're waiting for the result to be declared, but things as the night is unfolding look increasingly clear that in a number of areas locally, not in Gosport, but it's the Reform vote that appears to be having the say as to who the eventual winner is. So at the moment, Reform I think have only got one MP across the line, which was the chap affectionately known as 50p Lee, who defected from the Conservatives. So we'll wait and see how the rest of it unfurls. But I'm surprised Labour haven't strode forward yet, I believe, to claim victory, although Keir Starmer has retained his seat, which I don't think was much of a surprise to anyone, Simon.
No, I don't think that. So that's definitely not a surprise to anybody. I think the current scores on the doors are Conservatives 18, Labour at 114, Lib Dems at 14, Reform 1, so 497 still to declare.
So we're probably only about 500. Yeah, we're about 20, 25, about 20% through.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's usually some constituency that don't declare or start the count until the next day. So we won't get all the results in tonight.
Yeah, there's some outlier. I mean, things like I think the Scilly Isles, they end up getting theirs done on the countdown on Saturday. So.
Yeah, so we will wait for that. Well, we don't have anybody dialed in yet, and we have no definitive news to bring you from here. So we will sit back. We will tap the phone and try and rouse folk from other counts. And as soon as we got anything to bring you, we'll be back.
Yeah. So, just gonna get rid of the music. So that was an announcement for the candidates and agents to meet in the I think I can't remember what you call it, the pre-declaration area. But basically they're being taken off into the hallway to the right of the auditorium for Portsmouth South. Sorry, for Portsmouth South.
Yeah, and I think what we see often with the local elections is you think at that point it's they just gather everybody in the corridor and right, here's the result, up on stage we go, and that you'd expect the announcement to come possibly in the next 2 to 3 minutes, but often there's more of a gap than you might expect between the assembling of the folk. And again, I don't know whether there's an element of corralling all the folk together that has to happen before they can announce the result. We've lost contact, which obviously sounds a little bit Space Odyssey with our roving reporters across the south at the moment. What we are hearing is that the Havant result was down, I think it was 39 votes was separating the first two. So no surprise there that one's gone to a recount. And I think history tells us, Simon, when it's that close, there might not be just one.
Yeah, it might well be. Sometimes it's very close to the wire, and obviously that will warrant a count or two, and whether that, as you were saying earlier on, so when the ballots are accounted for each candidate, they're put into bundles, and a kind of a full check is actually just recounting them, whereas actually just a bundle check is actually just checking that the bundles are apportioned correctly. So there's a kind of a different level of kind of recounting that can be done depending on kind of how worried that any of the candidates or the agents are that the result has been counted incorrectly.
Well, I guess when you're looking at 40,000 votes, or 20, 30, 40,000 votes, if they're bundling them up into 50s or even 25s, one wrong bundle in one wrong pile, and it's a 39 vote swing. That's the difference potentially between winning and losing, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed, and in some places it can make all the difference. Obviously the constituency where the candidates and agents have just been invited out of the auditorium is Portsmouth South, which will be very surprising if there's a difference in who's returned as the MP. I don't think that's going to happen. But where there might be a neck and neck fight is what's happening in second and third, or even possibly fourth. And that's kind of the thing. I've got a message here from our roving reporter in Gosport. It said that he tried to call our number. So our apologies, Paddy, that you couldn't get through. I don't quite know why the tech has failed us, but thank you for trying to keep us apprised as to what's going on, what has been going on in Gosport. And
I guess Paddy nailed his colours fairly firmly to the reform mast some time ago, and so I guess for Paddy, whilst it perhaps wasn't the result they were looking for in Gosport, as the results are rolling in, Nigel Farage has been elected in Clacton, so I'm guessing it will be a pretty good night for Paddy, with their candidate polling 8,000 votes in Gosport.
Yeah, indeed. Actually, he's taken us up on the offer. I'm going to try and give him a call on Messenger and see if I can get him that way.
Yeah.
But he also notes that he feels that it's they've essentially more established in Gosport, and that's good. In other news, Jeremy Corbyn has won his seat, or retained his seat. Sorry.
Oh, as an independent.
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess the people of Islington have elected him and been happy with him as their MP for many years now, and I think would have been surprised.
Sorry.
Oh,
hello,
Paddy Bergin. How are you, sir?
Tired, sir.
Yes, no, it's been a long day and night, and I guess for you, you've been pounding the pavements, a long campaign. But how would you summarise the outcome in Gosport?
I was delighted. I might sound weird. We came third from nowhere 6 weeks ago. We picked up over 7,000 seats. So, you know, I think that's a worthy achievement given the timelines and everything else. Obviously, with no budget, as opposed to our friends in Labour, and they are our friends. We've been getting on great the whole time here, and the Conservatives. Yeah, I'm as a campaign manager. My expectations weren't far from where we are. But yeah, I'm proud of the team and delighted that we chipped away at the former majority, got Caroline down to 17,000. And Labour did well. They performed very well. And unusually, the Lib Dems didn't really show. They didn't put much effort in. I don't know why. Perhaps they were playing some sort of tactical game. But it was a good campaign, clean all around. No complaints with any other parties. And sorry to see some of the smaller ones, you know, continue to lose deposits. And I know we're a small party. Although we've had a couple of gains, I gather. I've just got in now, so I'm just trying to catch up with the historical events of the day.
Yeah, so Lee's obviously been returned, and obviously Nigel Farage has won Clacton.
Yeah, another one's just popped up. I don't know who that is.
And you know, from what we've seen here, very a strong showing in Havant, though it looks like Reform are going to be third there, and Portsmouth North. It looks as if Reform has made the difference in terms of quite a strong Reform vote, which means that it looks like Amanda Martin for Labour are going to win Portsmouth North and unseat Penny Morgan.
Yeah, I mean, Penny. Sorry, I'm just going to say that they undervalue others and Portsmouth North. So I think that was always on the cards.
So we are just, if we can just pause you for a second, Paddy.
We've got the result for Havant.
We've got the result for Havant has just come
yeah,
through.
Conservative hold.
And so, unbelievable. Well, Alan Mack has held Havant. Well, from what we heard, Paddy, that was down to.
I've got the results here.
Read them out.
So Alan Mack, 12,986. Conservatives, for Labour, Stephanie Harvey, 12,894. For Reform, John Perry, 9,959. For Liberal Democrats, Gayatri Satyanath, 3,275. For Green, Nettie Shepherd, 2,861. Workers' Party of Britain, Jennifer Alamino, 211. So really close there between
less than
Labour
100
and
votes.
Conservative.
Yeah, I mean, Labour really piled it in down here, and I mean, in a good campaign, you know, there was nothing nefarious about what they did. It doesn't hurt that I'm pals with their campaign manager, so we kept an eye on one another. Yeah, I think there's a bit of a theme developing here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is. You know, we're still waiting on the result from Fareham. I don't know whether you've heard anything.
No, not at all. I phoned the candidate and I haven't had a response at the moment.
Yeah,
I mean, he didn't have much of a campaign at all.
Yeah,
so I don't.
Yeah,
you know.
The message reaching us, Paddy, is the Tory support has not been great there, but we probably haven't had an update for a few hours. So I guess a hold for Alan Mack. I guess in terms of somebody who's now the colours to Reform from the start, and you know, we can talk about PR on a future episode of the podcast, because it looks like, you know, Reform is probably going to be, you know, heading up towards 20% of the vote share, and is probably going to end up with sort of, you know, if I'm being optimistic for you, Paddy, probably around sort of 10 MPs. I guess
I scaled back to 9 at the moment,
right,
based on the way the results are going. That's what I think.
So I guess if we look at that, Paddy, I mean, what, you know, Reform are not going to be they're probably going to be the fourth, fourth or fifth largest party in Westminster. I guess what realistically is your hope going forward after tonight's result?
Well, going forward as a parliament with the shock, well, not shock in my view, but with Jeremy Corbyn in his pendant, which I think has upset a lot of the more to the centre Labour Party. I think there could be shenanigans going on there. I'm looking at Suella now making an acceptance speech, so I think we can safely say that that's done.
Right. So
Okay, thank you.
Fareham's retained. Well spotted.
I've not seen any numbers, but she stood there making the speech, so I guess that's a done deal.
Yeah.
Going forward, I think the key thing in terms of reform and reform only, I think there's a strong case now, and I don't think Labour will carry on, as most parties don't, when they talk about PR and then they get elected and then they don't want to know about PR, especially if they're a big win. But when we see the overall Lib Dem numbers, seats returned based on their percentage, I think there's a stronger argument ever, even though I've most of my life supported first past the post. I've become less inclined to it now, maybe because I'm in a minority, a small party. So there's, Liberal Democrats percentage, lots and lots of seats when you compare it to, and the Lib Dems are now on 19, I believe they're plus 16. So, we'll have to look at the whole thing. I suppose draw a picture at the end of the day. What was the vote share? What did they get? And, and go from there.
We're just gonna pause you for a second there, Paddy.
Sure,
because,
no trouble at all, my friend.
No, because the returning officer is calling forward the candidates from Portsmouth North into the provisional results area. At one point, we thought there might have been a kind of a recount, but it looks to me now like the die is about to be cast for Portsmouth South and Portsmouth North, both of which are going to be a Labour hold and a Labour gain.
I would imagine so. Yeah, I would imagine that.
Sorry, cut you off.
Go on, not a problem.
Yeah, we're seeing some reports of Fareham as a Conservative hold, but not seeing that kind of confirmed on some other websites. So we'll see what kind of happens with that on.
Yeah, I'm just watching Suella on the TV give an acceptance speech. So
well, it would be bizarre of her not to be accepting it if that wasn't the case. But okay. Well, so things are certainly moving on at getting to a crescendo here in Portsmouth. But like you say, Paddy, it's been quite the turnaround and quite an achievement from a standing start for you there.
I believe so. I mean, it will be difficult if we remain on 3 seats to start with, because it's the favourites, isn't it? Lee Anderson was the first called. Nigel, one other, don't know. We don't know what Richard Tice has done yet. That might firm up a few people. And then we run second in quite a lot of seats in Wales, as far as I understand. But of course, we know running second doesn't help. But I think that'll be our biggest marker of how much we've grown, how many seats, and what those majorities are. That'll be a good indicator. But that'll all be in the wash up on Friday.
Yeah,
or Monday. I beg your pardon.
The third one was Great Yarmouth, by the way.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Oh yeah, he's quite a high-ranking spokesman for the party, so it looks like the big wigs aren't doing too bad. But they look good, I'm hoping for more. I've got a list of the seats we think we stood a chance with to start with, a chance on to start with. I've got to run through that in a minute and see if they've declared, just for my own peace of mind before I lapse into a coma.
Yeah. So I guess with all of these things, Paddy, it's been a long 6 weeks, and I take you're going to treat yourself to a lay-in tomorrow morning, or this morning.
Yeah, indeed I will. I've just plugged in the massage chair. I'm sat in front of the telly with an obscenely large gin and tonic, so to watch back the rest of this. Then we need to do a wash up, like any party does, but we're going to give ourselves a break. We started with 3 people 6 weeks ago, and as of 3 days ago, we had some 40 people canvassing for us. So now we're getting stalls up in all the different parts of the constituency. So we've got a base now. We've got a bedrock. All of them want to become part of an association. So from a standing start to run third in a general election, I can't be unhappy with that.
No. Well, thank you ever so much, Paddy, for keeping us informed through.
You're always welcome, my friend.
We appreciate that, and enjoy the break now before campaigning starts again.
Indeed. We'll see you next year at the counties, etc.
Thanks, Paddy.
Take care, guys.
Thanks.
Cheers. You're welcome. Bye.
Cheers, bye. Yeah. So it is. There is, there's still some shocks, isn't there, coming tonight? Even though,
Yeah, and I'll be honest that haven't result. Whilst Alan Mack had a huge majority, that results come as quite a shock for me, if I'm honest. I would have said if we were looking for, an upset amongst the sort of five, I would have had Alan Mack as being the most likely to be upset. I followed the campaign online quite extensively, and for me, Steph Harvey looked like she had the momentum going with her, and I thought after the results we had seen in the locals, I generally in 100 votes, when the margin ran to tens of thousands in 2019 will be encouraging, but I guess, I'm guessing folk will be, there's almost an element of couldn't unseat the Conservative in Havant tonight. When will you ever have a better chance?
yeah, I mean it's a strange one. I mean, especially if Portsmouth North goes the way that George was thinking that it will. That does seem to be a bit of a strange turn up for the Brooks, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, I think in terms of just pure numbers, if we look at Caroline Dinage, Suella Braverman, Alan Mack, and Penny Mordaunt, she was the person who had the thinnest margin in terms of the number of votes, but I think it was still a significant number of thousands, and I think for many local commentators, myself included, I thought, her position, at the coronation being very high profile, I don't think the 7-person debate was particularly helpful to her, because obviously the other 6 parties were all in opposition, and so it was always going to be a pile on to the Conservatives. But yeah, I mean, we've not heard any talk of recounts around us, so it feels to me like it's a done deal, and it's going to be pretty disappointing. As I say, I went on record as saying I only had 2 hopes for this election, and that was that Penny retained her seat and that we didn't see a rise in reform. And so, as so often happens, as I'm sat here in the Guildhall in the wee small hours of the morning, Simon, it's not been my night again.
No, it's not kind of gone your way, but we shall see. Sorry, I'm just seeing some things in the chat which are throwing me up. The Fareham and Waterlooville, by the way, Suella Braverman 17,561, Labour Gemma Furniville 11,482, Liberal Democrat Bella Hewitt 9,533, Reform Kevin Chippendale Higgin 9,084, Green Basmarie 2,036, Hampshire Independents Robert Holiday 217, and Rejoin EU Edward Dean 210.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? In that effectively, Suella gets home by 6,000, but 4 parties there, all polling about 10,000 each.
Yeah, there's certainly a scrap going on, isn't it? It just kind of goes to show where the rest of the vote is split. I mean, a lot of those are essentially on the left, obviously Reform not. So there's an interesting kind of competition for votes. There's as others have said, there's a lot of cases I think being made tonight about proportional representation, the first past the post, doing lots of people out of the usefulness of their votes. But we should keep our eyes peeled as more results come in.
So I guess from our perspective, we were covering the 5. We've had 3 in. We're waiting for Portsmouth, both south and north, and I hope I didn't curse it when I said that when they call the candidates forward, you hope that within a couple of minutes they'll announce the result. But obviously, nobody has strode forward to announce Portsmouth South, which I think has come as a bit of a surprise to me, to be honest, Simon, because it looked when the count started that, you know, the spoiled ballot papers was about 20 minutes ahead of the North. They were called in probably best part of half an hour ago into the pre-election area. So I was rather expecting.
Yeah, I've seen someone in the chat saying saying about the result for Portsmouth South. I mean, it's not been declared, but I don't think what's being said is any different, not being funny than what everybody else knows. I've got the results for Chichester here. Chichester, the Lib Dems have won, taking it from the Conservatives. So Jess Brown Fuller, 25,540. Conservative Gillian Keegan, 13,368.
Wow, I mean that's not just taking it, is
Yeah,
it? That's a massacre. That's a 12,000 majority.
Yeah, it's nearly twice as much. Theresa DeSantis for Reform, 7,859. Tom Collins for Labour, 3,175. Tim Young for Green, 1,815. And Independent Andrew Emerson, 190.
Yeah, and again, that's another interesting. And again, it's who can understand the demographics of politics in terms of, you know, Chichester just along the way would be considered to be quite an affluent area. You know, and I guess if you would, you know, if you would have mirrored what happened in Fareham there by adding the sort of Lib Dem and the Labour vote together and then splitting it in half, you know, it would have been a lot closer than it has been. But Labour almost nowhere, and the Lib Dems absolutely romping home with that one.
Yeah, apparently someone saying in the chat that ITV have said that Portsmouth South has been declared.
Well, we are here.
Missed it.
Yeah, yeah, and I promise you that I think in terms of the result being known, there's been some general whooping and wallowing to our left, which we think is
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
You know, there is no real kind of you know, there's no intrigue as to who has won it. You know, there was some talk about who was going to be coming second, third, and fourth. But I don't know, Simon. Is it a case of, you know, if you were in third and you were 10 votes behind the person in second, can you call for a recount?
I don't know at what point it starts to be a nuisance. So we had a lady come up to the podium with some pieces of paper, and then as she walked away again from the podium, everyone has.
It's all become a touch pantomime, isn't it?
Oh no, it hasn't.
Yeah.
Just come back to the auditorium.
Here we go.
Ask the candidates for Portsmouth North to come on the stage, please.
Okay,
so
the
we are going to get
Portsmouth North
is going to get declared before Portsmouth South.
That's interesting.
Portsmouth North imminent. Portsmouth North.
So we're here at the back of the auditorium, and obviously all the media folk around us have woken up and sprung into action, so you might hear a lot of voices around us. We'll try as much as we can to bring you the results as they're read out.
1,051. Melvin Stewart Todd, Reform UK, 8,501. I therefore give public notice that Amanda Louise Martin is duly elected as a Member of Parliament for the Portsmouth North constituency.
And hopefully you heard that, Amanda Martin elected by just over 700 votes.
And just to finish, the total number of votes cast in Portsmouth North constituency was 41,741. The total number of ballot papers rejected was 148. 22 ballot papers were rejected because votes were given for more than one candidate. 126 ballot papers were rejected because they were unmarked or void for uncertainty. The turnout for Portsmouth North was 59.25%.
So Amanda stepping forward to give her speech.
Firstly, I'd like to say a huge thank you to the returning officers, the people counting, staff at polling stations, the police and the staff here this evening, and to my amazing campaign team and beautiful family. To thank personally, but without whom it wouldn't be possible to have this journey, and also a thank you to my agent. I would also like to thank the other candidates. It's never easy putting yourself forward for public office. I would also like to thank Penny Mordaunt for her 14 years of service and the amazing role she played in the coronation of our King. My campaign was one of positivity, change and hope for the people of Portsmouth North. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart for those who went out and voted for that change. Whether you voted for Labour or not in this election, I want to say that as your MP, I will work for you. Portsmouth is my home. It's where everybody I love lives. And being your MP,
on stage at any moment now, but clearly that it is a close race.
is the privilege of a lifetime, and I will not take it for granted. Tonight is historic. We have returned in the bellwether seat a Labour MP, and we hopefully return a Labour government. And if my friend and colleague even more, it will be the first time we have 2 Labour MPs in the home of the Royal Navy. I look forward to working together and will champion Portsmouth in the heart of a Labour government, starting from now. Thank you very much.
So Amanda there, again, quite an emotional speech, obviously it's been a long time. And Penny staying forward.
So there is disappointed about the results tonight. Let me change. Democracy is never wrong. I want to thank my thanks to all those who have facilitated this election, the count, the police, those who man polling stations, the electoral team at Portsmouth City Council, and also to all candidates who run in North and South, and in particular my running mate in the South, Sina Biddle. Congratulations, Amanda. You have my assurance that I and my team will do everything we can to assist you in setting up your office and having a smooth transfer of our casework so that the people of Portsmouth have a good service throughout that period. Amanda, you will know that you are now working for the best employer ever. The people of Portsmouth are wonderful, hard-working, big-hearted, and anything that I ever achieved was made possible by them, and I thank them for the opportunities they. I will never caring for these people or this place. And in all things, I've been guided by them, their common sense, their determination, their ambitions and hopes, their pride in our city and our nation. Tonight, the Conservative Party has taken a battering because it failed to honour the trust that people had placed in it. You can speak all you like of security and freedom, but you can't have either if you are afraid. Afraid about the cost of living or accessing healthcare, or whether the responsibility you shoulder will be recognised and rewarded. That fear steals the future, and it only makes the present matter, and that is why we lost. Our renewal as a party and a country will not be achieved by us talking to an ever smaller slice of ourselves, but by being guided by the people of this country. And if we want again to be the natural party of government, then our values must be the people's. I've lost many good colleagues tonight, but I hope that, like me, they intend to carry on serving their communities with even stronger heart. Our country needs all of us. And finally, I want to thank my campaigners, my team here in Portsmouth, led by Rob New, my parliamentary team, those who supported me, including other political parties, particularly the independent group under George Madgwick, but also the thousands of activists across the country who, in the darkest of times, not of their making, fought like hell for what they believed in and a better future. I've never been prouder of you all. And now each of us has even more reason to fight on, so we must. Good luck to all of you, in particular Amanda, and thank you, Portsmouth.
Wow.
Yeah, much to digest in the speeches of both candidates, I think. I thought both, approached that with dignity and decency, and it's the worst public sacking in the world, isn't it, when you get rejected by the electorate?
Indeed, the applause nearest is Portsmouth North candidate for Reform, Melvin Todd, just coming up to sit with his colleagues. It's the strangest interview process.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I have the candidates and agents for Portsmouth South constituency in the provisional results area?
Okay, so Portsmouth
Back
South
to the provisional
results area. Interesting. What
they've been there twice.
Yes. So what's got? I mean, it can't be for.
It can't be the result itself.
For the result itself, no.
I mean, at the end of the day, at all, we would have picked that up in the hall. So, ultimately, if we look at it, it is we're waiting for that. And I guess if we look at that result, it came down to just 700 votes, 8,000 votes for Reform. And if we look at, from memory, I think last time Penny stood, she got 25,000 votes. And obviously it looks like the majority of those, or a large chunk of her 11,000 that she's lost, have ended up crossing to Reform.
Yeah, it's yes. I guess from the Conservatives, they've been attacked on both sides, haven't they?
Yeah, and it is going to be interesting because there is that element of I do wonder how many of those 8,000 Reform voters will be delighted when they wake up this morning to find that they have a Labour MP representing them. Maybe they won't care, and the support for reform was enough in itself. But I do wonder whether there might be an element of buyer's remorse when they look at the result and the way that it's gone.
Well, I guess that that's a matter for them. That's how first past the post works. At the end of the day, people will have different reasons of deciding to vote one way or the other, and whether what at the end of the day, when you cast your ballot, you don't know what everyone else is doing.
No,
to a degree, you can only kind of look at the prevailing wind, and if that alters your decision, then it alters your decision. If it doesn't, and you hold true and vote for who you want to vote for, then you do. But you have to say, to come from nowhere to 8,500 votes.
Yeah, and I guess the question is, and it's the question. Is it a question? That reform is basically UKIP with a new badge on the front. And again, if we look back to the days when UKIP were quite strong in Portsmouth, obviously Paulsgrove had UKIP councillors. There was, I guess, how many of those sleeping UKIP voters have turned out for reform? I guess we will, as you say, we will never know.
The candidates have very quickly come back from their cogitation in the hallway for Portsmouth South. So hopefully this means that the result for Portsmouth South is imminent.
Absolutely. And I guess the other question in play, and again, this is where the analysis comes in, is historically, when we've looked at the turnouts locally, those areas like Drayton and Farlington, where historically the Conservatives, that's been their absolute heartland, we've seen very high turnouts there. I wonder whether I don't think a reduced turnout will have helped Penny at all.
Well, no, I mean, again, without kind of poring over the numbers, and you'll never know for sure. But if a lot of the reduction in the turnout is your own vote staying home, then yes, that's going to hurt you a lot harder than it will any of the other candidates.
So we're not expecting any kind of shock from Portsmouth South, so we'll bring you that one. I guess as the stories are unfolding throughout the night and the totalizer is ticking up, I guess this will probably be one of the bigger upsets. I think at the start of the night, the exit poll only gave Penny a 25% chance of retaining her seat. So I guess we can't say this is a mega shock against the backdrop of the Labour landslide. But
no, I must admit, I found the polls difficult to, because quite early on in the polls during the course of the campaign, the polls were saying that this would be the result for Portsmouth North. But I must admit, I didn't believe that was so solid appeared. Penny's majority that didn't seem to be likely. Just a quick update on what the state is nationally. Conservatives on 44, Labour on 235, Lib Dems on 30, Reform on 4, SNP on 4.
Yeah, so it looks like all of the exit polls are going to be pretty much spot on. Again, when we were going back to last Sunday, perhaps the annihilation, and I know it sounds stupid when we're looking at those numbers, isn't going to be as bad as those polls predicted. I think there's still the prediction that the Conservatives will get 131 seats rather than the 80 the statistical model predicted. But I think by any analytical model, this has been an unmitigated disaster, and we'll pick it up as we go into the summer season. I guess the question of what happens next politically, because you would think that, with Labour on more than 400 seats, this is the 10-year parliament, not a 5-year parliament. But I remember being sat, not here, but close by in 2019, where the
Yes.
Conservative majority was considered to be so big that it was going to take.
Yes, that it would be at least a two-term project.
Yeah.
And somehow, well, we could list how, but somehow they've managed to turn an 80-seat majority into crushing defeat.
Yeah, and I guess, I don't want to, draw parallels or make excuses. We've talked about it on the podcast. There has the Conservative Party since, some might argue earlier, but since 2019, I think did lose its way. Bedeviled by scandals, and even in the run up to the election, that kind of betting scandal just. I don't know. It just, for me, the people, after 14, 15 years in government, there was going to be a natural kind of apathy and tiredness anyway. The bounce post COVID, or the kind of depression post COVID, all of those factors were in play. But there was very much, I'm not trying to excuse it away. When you're, someone within your organisation is creating a new scandal of your own making just 2 or 3 weeks before you go to the polls, I'm not sure that's shooting yourself in the foot. It's almost blowing your whole lower leg off with a bazooka.
Yeah, it's been strategic blunder after strategic blunder, really. But it is what it is. At the end of the day, Rishi Sunak asked the public, asked the voters of the United Kingdom to tell him what they thought, and they have.
Well, the message is loud and clear, and I'm fairly certain he will retain his seat, but his position's untenable, and obviously there will be the circling of the wagons, significantly fewer wagons. I think if you looked at most bookmakers, they had Penny Mordaunt odds on to be the next leader of the Conservative Party and the leader of the opposition. Obviously, that's not going to happen now. So for me, it will be interesting, and perhaps slightly concerning to see which way the Conservative Party goes when electing a new leader, because I can't see Rishi staying.
I mean, I know he said that he would, but I can't see how that he could, other than basically staying on as a caretaker while the party figures out what the hell it wants to do next.
Well, and I guess it's irrelevant what they want to do next, isn't it? Because, the die is cast, the business of government starts tomorrow, and they have no part in it. So
no, indeed, from that, from that point there, they spend the next 5 years, essentially in political irrelevance, where they can do essentially what they did in 1997, where they basically launched into a intense and painful period of introspection and leader swapping, and before they kind of found a way back to the centre with Cameron. Whether they'll do that, or whether they'll find that journey easy, or whether that journey will involve having to lurch further off to the right in order to try to win back the people that have drifted off to reform. Who knows? I guess that's that's the fight for the heart and soul of the Conservative Party that the Conservative Party will have to undertake in the days and weeks ahead.
And I guess and that's where it's interesting, isn't it, about the polarisation of politics. If you look at the defeat that Labour took in 2019, they ran on a what would be considered a much further left manifesto and a more kind of socialist manifesto than the one that's seen them sweep into government with a massive majority. So it will be interesting to see which way the Conservatives go, because I think what we've seen probably over the last 10 years in UK politics is the extreme left wasn't electable, The further right has done very well tonight, but I'm not sure that if the Conservatives do lurch further right, I think they might take themselves into a position of ideological unelectability, and Labour will then just simply sit in the centre ground for as long as they want to.
Lady at podium, accompanied by Lord Mayor. So looks like the Portsmouth South declaration is imminent.
And this one will be an interesting one as to who comes second
Yes,
and third.
the news will be the second and third places. Everyone was expecting.
Yeah, and I think
Stephen Morgan to be returned.
Absolutely, and I think there was a lot of talk about the fact that Portsmouth South had brought in a paper the Conservatives have brought in a candidate from out of ours. I'll shush now.
The election of Member of Parliament for the Portsmouth South constituency, and I'd like to ask the Lord Mayor of Portsmouth to declare the results.
I, Councillor Jason Fazackerley, returning officer for the Portsmouth South constituency, hereby declare the total number of votes given to each candidate was as follows. Sina Andrea Arkle, commonly known as Sina Andrea Biddle, the Conservative Party candidate, 5,643. Elliot Lee, the Green Party, 3,107. Stephen James Morgan, Labour Party, 18,857. Charles Scott Murphy, commonly known as Charlie Murphy, Liberal Democrat, 4,886. Jacob Lee Shaw, Portsmouth Independent Party, 733. And Mark Zimmer, Reform UK, 5,702. I therefore give public notice that Stephen James Morgan, Labour Party, is duly elected as a Member of Parliament for the Portsmouth South constituency.
Well, as we predicted, a landslide for Stephen Morgan, and less than 100 votes between second and third.
The total number of votes cast in Portsmouth South constituency was 38,928. The total number of ballot papers rejected was 180. 46 ballot papers were rejected because votes were given for more than one candidate. 2 ballot papers were rejected because there was something written or marked on the ballot paper by which the voter could be identified. And 132 ballot papers were rejected because they were unmarked or void for uncertainty. The turnout for Portsmouth South was 53.05%. Thank you.
So,
I'd like to ask the person candidate if you'd like to say a few words.
The people of Portsmouth have spoken. They have voted to change our country for the better, and that change starts right here tonight. I want to start by thanking the acting returning officer, election staff and police for the smooth running of both this election and count. Your work enables our democracy, and it could not be more important. Thank you also to all my fellow candidates for putting themselves forward to represent this great city. It takes courage to stand for election, and I believe this is the first time each of you stood in a national election. And I think this campaign, which has been competitive but positive and respectful throughout, is one we can all be proud of. A final thank you to my agent John and my fantastic, committed campaign team and all those who volunteered their time over the last 6 weeks. Your enthusiasm, support and dedication has been crucial and made this victory possible. Being the MP for the city that I love is the greatest privilege of my life. I'm honoured and humbled to have the opportunity to continue serving the people of Portsmouth. For those who put their faith in me and in Labour, thank you. I don't take it lightly and promise to work every day to pay that faith back. As results across the country pour in, and as we've seen with the election of the fantastic Amanda Martin, my good friend and now parliamentary colleague, it is clear we have made history tonight. Now we must use this historic result to change our country, to rebuild Britain, and to provide it with the fresh start it needs. It's now time for 2 Labour members of Parliament for Portsmouth to roll up their sleeves and get to work and deliver for the people of Portsmouth. Thank you.
So I guess that brings
The count for Portsmouth. Can I just thank all of the staff that have participated this evening, who have worked tirelessly throughout the day and making the count. And have safe journey home, everybody. Thank you.
So that brings us to the end of our election night special. I guess if we summarise, holds for the Conservatives in Gosport, Fareham and Havant, and Labour take Portsmouth. So
indeed. Sorry, just one quick. So Amy was asking how many was it between the cons and Reform. So Reform beat the Conservatives. Reform taking second place by 59 votes in Portsmouth South.
yeah, and to be honest, it was that wasn't unexpected. I don't think. The Conservatives really had withdrawn from Portsmouth South. There was a lot of controversy that they had brought in a candidate from Winchester rather than somebody local, and a handsome win for Stephen Morgan. So I guess as time is drawing on, Simon, and they'll want to throw us out, I guess the victorious cheers of the Labour team ringing in the background. It's time for us to sign off. You've been listening to the Pompey Politics Podcast General Election Special. I've been Ian Tiny Morris.
And I've been Simon Sansbury. Do like, follow, subscribe to us on YouTube, Facebook, etc. So you can find out when our next episode will be, which won't be until we've actually had some sleep and some proper food. But thank you very much for all of you for watching and commenting along and keeping us awake. Hopefully we kept you awake if you wanted to be kept awake, or at least allow you to sleep if that was actually your preference. But talking of sleep, that's precisely what we're going to be doing now. So thanks very much for following. We'll see you soon, and that's good night from us. It says just. Don't forget to like, follow and comment on Facebook, or comment and subscribe on YouTube. Find us on all the social media platforms: Facebook,